Pacific Drums and Percussion presents Get It Started with Daru Jones, with special guests Aric and 𝗚𝗚𝗡𝗏, and 𝗏𝗘𝗏. And now, live from the Ship Studio in Los Angeles. Let's get it started.
Greetings, Daru Jones here. We're live in LA. I'm glad to be here. We got a special show today, and it's the first time that I'm hosting out in this part of the States. I'm glad to be out here, and we got a special guest. We got my co-host Jules in the building. Y'all can't see her, but I can see her, but she's here. We got a really cool show for y'all today, and I'm really excited about the guests that I have, and I'm very gracious for their time. You know what I'm saying? I want to thank you guys. You know, sorry about the delay, but we end a lot earlier than the last show, so that's good news. Yeah, like I said, I'm very excited about today's topic. And before we get started, I want to talk about the gear that I'm using today. So what you see me playing on is the DJNY Daru Jones New Yorker. This is my signature kit with PDP DW. I'm also a 𝗚𝗘𝗧 drum head endorsee. So these are 𝗚𝗘𝗧 heads. These are actually the factory heads that come with the kit. They sound pretty cool. I'm also a 𝗚𝗘𝗧 cymbal artist, and I'm using my PSTX DJs45. It's the collaboration that I've done with them. Everything is 12 inches. Yep, it's a portable vibe. Got the vinyl hi-hat popping. And then I'm using the splash stack, kind of give you that clap kind of sound. And what else am I using? Oh, LP live percussions. Y'all see these little tricks and toys. Attachments, and then I got the tambourine, and also a head drumsticks, Big Bang distribution. These are the Daru Jones Leo stick. They're out now. All these products you can get at Sweetwater. There's Google online. They have it at other stores. And yeah, I'm very excited. You know, this is like a portable vibe. And want to shout out Brother Aaron for allowing us to come use his studio. The name of this place is called The Ship. Really cool room. I actually had the honor of doing some things in here. During my LA trip. So yeah, come check the place out. The sound is really dope. So yeah, we got a lot to talk about today. That intro piece that I was playing just reminded me of my guest, and I can never play like the original person, but it was my interpretations of a Steely Dan tune called was that 𝗚𝗔𝗥𝗓? Yeah, so I was just kind of playing my vibe, you know, playing my swag, but you know, shout out to one of our guests. His name is the great 𝗏𝗘𝗏. You know what I'm saying? One of my good friends I had the pleasure of meeting. And I remember finding out about Keith years ago because I think I started tilting my drums in 2006. And it's a whole story behind that. I was just trying to have an identity when I started working in the hip hop community. But anyway, I had no idea that, you know, I knew about Keith, but as far as the tilting, I didn't even know until later on. But it was just so cool to find a mutual brother from the same planet. You know what I'm saying? But much respect to brother 𝗏𝗘𝗏. He's one of our guests. We also have the legendary, my big brother, 𝗏𝗑𝗏𝗏. You know what I'm saying? I've been a Vinny disciple since I was a teenager. So I'm looking forward to speaking with him, and it's such an honor to have his friendship. And our very first guest, before we bring our first guest on, I want to talk about my experience on the topic. How do I survive touring? But before I talk about that, we got an amazing gentleman that I met in Paris. His name is 𝗟𝗜𝗡𝗘𝗏. Amazing. Do your Googles, check him out. This guy is from another galaxy, cartwheels and all that on the drum kit. So very excited to talk to this brother. But before we get started, I want to talk about this, my experience surviving touring. As y'all know, touring is a whole nother beast. You know what I'm saying? Like it's just a whole nother level of trying to be disciplined, making sure you get the proper sleep. You know what I'm saying? It's a lot of things that people, they see you playing these high profile gigs. They think it's all peachy and butter, but it's not always what it seems. You know what I'm saying? Like a lot of times you got to commute, whether you're flying, you know what I'm saying, whether you're on a tour bus, and that stuff can be very wearing on your body. You know what I'm saying? So just things that I've learned from just my career when I started graduating from different genres, I just, I could definitely tell the difference between my experience when I was playing in the hip hop community was different when I graduated and started playing rock and roll. You know what I'm saying? Just it's a lot of things are a little bit more structured differently, you know what I'm saying? And it's just different. But I had to figure out what I needed to do just to maintain mentally, you know what I'm saying? Because being away from your family, being away from home can really be wearing on mentally, you know what I'm saying? And it can be tough. It can be tough. And if you're a homebody, you're not used to going out on the road, touring might not be for you. You know what I'm saying? But you just got to do what you got to do. And what I've learned and where I'm at in my life right now, I changed my diet. You know what I'm saying? Back in the days, I was a snack guy. I still eat my snacks, but it was all about junk food, you know what I'm saying? Like cookies and McDonald's and basically some of the tours that are on, like especially just in the hip hop world, the budgets were a little bit different. So, the per diems were not as much and you have to make the best of it. So sometimes you can only afford to get a value meal, you know what I'm saying? A value meal. But anyway, it doesn't matter if the budget is slim. You just got to figure out and just be wise in your spending. You know what I'm saying? Like our body don't really need all that food. And I know in the States, they give us the portion that they give us for one person is pretty much like a family portion. Because if you count the calories, it's like, that's a lot. So you just got to learn how to, maybe you can save, eat half of the food, save the other half, just got to find little tricks, little cheat codes, just so you can, you can survive and have a little bit extra money, because you don't want to have to go in your own pocket if you're only giving a $20 per diem or $40 per diem a day. So you just got to, figure out, how to manage your money, and also just surviving, depending on the gig that you're doing, making sure you're prepared. You know what I'm saying? Because depending on what you're playing, like I'm gonna give you a perfect example. One of my biggest tours in my career was working with Jack White from the White Stripes. Shout out to Jack. I'm thankful that he brought me on. I was able to play on all 3 solo records. But I remember when he brought me on to play on the tour, he basically had us learn all the catalogs from the White Stripes Rock on tours. And in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, cool. One of the things that people were hiring me for, they said I got a good memory and I pay attention to details. So I'm automatically in my mind saying, okay, I need to learn how to play these songs just like the records. But when I did my first rehearsal for the tour, Jack was like, I don't want y'all to play like the original records. He wanted us to elaborate, and plus, like the White Stripe stuff was only 2 members, so we had to figure out how to transcribe that with a 5-piece band. Just to make a long story short, when I played with Jack White, we didn't have a set list. You know what I'm saying? Everything you saw was live, and it was a challenge. It was a challenge, and I had to just figure out. We had to watch Jack. Sometimes he would come whisper the song, or we had to listen to what he's playing. But just being able to survive that, being able to have that skill set to be able to pay attention. So just learn how to adapt to your environments. Every environment is not like that. You know what I'm saying? But you want to make sure that you do what your boss is required so you can keep your gig. You know what I'm saying? And just surviving. Also, when you're on these tours, depending if you're flying, sometimes the shows start late at night. So that means you got to make sure you're not partying too much after the show, because you got to go to the next city. And if you don't have a proper rest, You're going to be cranky. You're going to be moody. So all of these things going into surviving the tour. So, I don't want to bore you out too much, but I just want to say, just try to find ways, do what you got to do, to keep your mental headspace. I started getting back into the gym. So that's something that helps me out because I developed anxiety as well. When I lost my dad a few years ago, rest in peace, Dad. I was on a tour. I was in the UK. Oh, no, I was on a tour with Jamie Ludell, and I got the news that my dad had went into cardiac arrest. And the flights that I took back home, they had so much turbulence. I developed really a bad case of anxiety. So I had to start figuring out what to do because I'm having trouble now. I'm just getting on planes. So I'm figuring out how to survive this mentally. I'm doing therapy. So do what you got to do. And I think this pandemic has really shown us, gave us a little more time to figure some things out, like some self, healing. A lot of us needed healing. You know what I'm saying? So I basically took this time to try to, I had some therapy and I started learning how to cook more. And, the best thing you can do is try to be as independent as possible because you don't want to be that person where you're needy. Your bosses and people, they look at all of that stuff, whether you're going to be a problem on the road. So survival of the fittest. And just know that if you're not doing what you got to do, there's somebody else's way to take your job. Without going further, we got a lot of guests today, so I want to respect their time. So this show might not be as long as others, but I'm thankful for these guys taking our time doing their busy schedule because they're all notable and they're all doing their thing. I want to give a shout out. Our first guest, I've actually met him at the Back Show. It's a drum show that they have. I think it's in Paris, and I was one of the guest drummers. Shout out to the companies that brought me over. And I just learned about Mr. Aric. My head was cracked because I was like, I heard about this cat that was like doing gymnastics while playing, but it was just crazy to see it live. And I like Aric because he reminds me of himself. Like he carved out his own lane for himself. And that's something that I wanted to do. All my guests that I have on the show, they're in their own lane. So I say drummers is important. Depending on the type of drum that you want to do, find a lane that you want to be in, stick with it. Because when you do that, you're going to build an awareness of people. They're going to want to hire you because you got a thing. Each one of my artists and guests, they have a thing. So Aric, it was just really cool. Just when after the Back Show experience, I finally dove into his whole artistic vibe. Like he's not just a drummer. He draws. I'm gonna let him tell you what he does, but he's got a special thing. And what I didn't further do, let's bring on Aric and Proda.
How you doing? Thanks for having me, man. Am I coming through?
Here.
Yeah, I got it.
I think you got me muted on the I think I might be muted.
Daru, can you hear me?
Pardon a second.
Okay.
Get the audio. Can you talk, Aric?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I hear it now. Yeah, cool. My brother, how are you?
I'm good. I'm surviving COVID like everybody else as far as being home. And then I actually just literally today got over it. I ended up catching it somehow in the last couple of weeks. So this show ended up being perfect timing because today is my last day of quarantine, or yesterday was.
I'm going to move a little closer. Hold on one second. Aric. Wow. I'm so glad that you got through the COVID, bro. Man, it's serious business. I actually think I came across it when it first started.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I was on a tour. It's cool. I was on a tour in the UK in March, right before it started. I was on tour with 𝗵𝗘. He played with James Brown. He composed. He was one of the composers for Cold Sweat and a lot of other legendary tracks that James Brown did. I was on tour in the UK and right in March, and then I went to New York for a week and a half. And right before they shut down, when I got home, I was struggling. But I'm
Really?
so glad that you made it through, bro. Because people don't understand. It's still we're still in the pandemic. Like it ain't all the way sweet yet.
I know. And it's so funny you say that because we were right when it started to get reported, like just before the shutdown. Fever was in Japan and then Malaysia and then India. And so it was scary because you've got this new thing that you don't know, what the limitations are, where you can go. And everywhere we were at, we were trying to just wear masks and be careful. And, You know, it's like home stretch. We get the vaccination and I still don't even know where I got it. I hadn't been in contact with anybody that has it. Nobody got it that I talked to. So, you know, you never know. But glad to be here. Glad to be past that. So things are good.
Man, I'm so glad that you were able to be blessed to get through it, because I know that's not the same for, you know, for other people. And, you know, my condolences to those that lost any loved ones during the pandemic. You know, But today, just in the drumming community, I'm just grateful that you made it through, because I definitely respect what you do. And yeah, I don't want to keep you. I know you got sessions and you got things, you got drawings to do, but it was so cool, man, seeing you at the bag show, man. I that was my first time getting a chance to get introduced to what you do, and from there I went and looked at your other, you know, things on YouTube. I was like, yo, this cat is official. And it's like, man, can you for people that don't really know about you, can you give a little bit of a short background story of how you started? Yeah.
So I basically started, I grew up in Southern California, and we played almost all our shows in LA, between LA and Orange County. And we just played in punk bands and hardcore bands. And I don't know, like, I didn't really expect to be so tight into the drum community as far as like playing drum festivals and doing all these different extracurricular things beyond playing in bands. My goal was just to play with my friends. But I started doing the drum off, and I did that for about 5 years, the Guitar Center drum off. And then right when I graduated college in 2012 is when I got my first tour with 𝗏𝗏𝗧𝗏. And that band I still play with. And that's with my two closest friends. We've been playing music together since we were 12. So it's cool, because my goal was to make music with my friends. I mean, I wanted to tour the world. I wanted to get to be creative for a living, but I wanted to do it with people that I was close to, that I could relate to beyond just, you know, like a business relationship. And
so just jump in. I don't want to cut you off. So no, you played the Guitar Center drum off?
Yeah, I did 5 years of it. I ended up in the finals in 2012, which is actually where I first saw Keith. He had performed that year. But yeah, that was like a huge experience for me, because that's when I first got to meet like a lot of my favorite drummers, and I guess experience professional pressure. Because before that, I was just playing like local shows and stuff like that.
Yeah. Oh my God.
So I did that. And then in that time, I was friends with a band called 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗘. And their singer, when they broke up, ended up doing a project that was produced by Travis Barker and John Feldman. Travis Barker obviously plays for Blink-182. And then John Feldman sings for Goldfinger. So I started working with them about 3 years ago. 3.5, 4 now. Damn. And that's Fever. And then that's the band that ended up touring the world, and kind of like, you know, anything that I had ever wondered about, whether it was like going to the Grammys or playing on big festivals or getting in a bus, I got to experience that with Fever the last 4 years. So it's been cool.
Wow, that's amazing. That's such cool history. It's so cool. Just I think I'm glad that I came up at the time that I did, because I remember the Guitar Center drum off was like one of the big things in that era. I remember I played it in 2001. I was a lot younger.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Is there any video of that?
Yeah. Yep.
I gotta check that out.
I just posted it, but it's the same year that my Michigan brother Chris Coleman actually won that one. So I wasn't mad. One of my comrades won it, but it's just cool just to know that we came up in that time doing that Guitar Center drum off. That was historic, just to be able to play a part of that. Now, just speaking on your current band Fever, what were some of the things? Were you trying to survive? Like what were some of the tactics, or like how did you? I know that you have many experiences in your career when you started growing, and like where are you at with like the whole survival, like the survival mode, just trying to maintain?
Oh my God. Fever is like a lifesaver, because before that, with 𝗏𝗏𝗧𝗏, I did, and I'm not exaggerating when I say this, I did 4 years of touring where I didn't make $1. Like I legitimately grew up at a time when we believed that if you got to tour with your friends, then the money went into the band and that was it. So I would work at the YMCA in my time home, go on tour. Sometimes we'd have no per diem. We just have to save up money from home. And all the bands I looked up to at that time, they were like my favorite band at the time was At the Drive-In, which 2 of the members ended up making Mars Volta. And that era, a band could go from playing a bowling alley to being on K-Rock in like a year. So we just always thought like, it's okay if you're not making money, because if you're in front of the right person, it'll just happen. And we did 4 years of that, and like gnarly stuff we had to go through. Like one of my favorite stories, it wasn't cool at the time, was we were in Europe, and I remember it was so cold and the van was too cold to sleep in. And we ended up sleeping in that space. We were at the ferry office, but you know, the space where the sliding doors are, but it's like not actually in the building. There's just vending machines.
Oh my God.
We're sleeping in there, and they wouldn't let us in because it wasn't 6 a.m. when they opened up. And I remember we couldn't laugh. If anybody told a joke and we laughed and moved, then the automatic door would slide open and let all of the cold air and the snow in. So everybody was just saying jokes and then trying not to laugh. And I know those moments suck when you're going through it, but they ended up being some of my favorite moments to look back on. So to answer your question, once I got into Fever, even though we had vans to travel in, we ended up getting hotels and buses, and that was like a new world for me. So that part's been awesome. Even if it's not the most comfortable situation, it's been a big step up from no money and being in a van for 4 years.
Oh my God. I'm so glad you brought that up. So I want to stress this to the drummers, and kudos to you, bro. Now, I know that we live in a different era where we have the YouTube and you can just learn how to become, we have all of the online, you know, lessons, and that's cool and ain't knocking it, but you still got to pay dues. Don't matter. You know what I'm saying? Like you still got to pay dues, because like our dues were a lot different because we had to figure it out. We didn't have the cheat codes of the YouTubes, or we didn't always have access to be able to call like a 𝗘𝗘𝗏 or Vinny. Back in the days, you could not. They were untouchable.
No, totally. I mean, that's exactly what I was saying about the drum off. Is that was the only way I got to meet any of the people that I looked up to, was going through that process.
Yo, pay your dues. Pay your dues. It don't come easy, and it's encouraging to hear, you know, what you have to go through, because I remember the same thing. You know, coming up, you know, and not getting any per diem and just being excited. You gotta do what you gotta do. When it's time to grow into that next position, you'll know it. You'll know it because people that you're working with, they're familiar with working in that situation. So they're going to start asking you, hey, what is your normal per diem? Or, you know, it's going to come up, but gotta pay your dues. Gotta pay your dues. So that's commendable that you survived. And like you're saying, those rough times, it really builds character. It builds character. And, you know, I long for the days of just being able to practice. Go, you know, I used to go to the church and play for hours,
right?
Shed, and I long for that. Now my practice is right before a sound check. You know
I know people. I don't think people. I mean, maybe I can't speak for anybody else, but I know for me, I didn't really think about that. I remember when I was young and I was trying to get on tours, like all college, I was committed to 5 hours a day, and then when touring happened and all that time just disappears, you got to find a way to keep your chops up. And like you were talking about, you know, even just making the time to listen to the songs and learn all the parts. And I think for me, that was a big adjustment too, is just getting all that time like kind of taken away because you're in transit most of the time on tour.
Yeah, you're right. So eventually, did you have to figure out, because I know I did, because they say your body needs to have a certain amount of rest to function.
Yeah.
And I used to struggle, because when I was playing in the hip hop days, I was playing with the headliner artists, and sometimes we wasn't even going on until 2 a.m.
Damn.
And then we gotta play the set. Then we gotta drive to the next city. A lot of times we're not flying, so we're just figuring out. Okay, I need to make sure I get this type of rest. Was this the same for you? Just trying to figure out how to figure out what you needed to function properly. Because what you do with all acrobatics, bro, like. Don't you got to definitely be in shape? Like, what do you like? Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up skating, and that's where a lot of that stuff came from. I wanted to kind of like what you're talking about before, bring my personality into playing as much as possible, like you do as well. So, you know, there were moments where I would just go, all right, well, I don't have the time to skate, so I'm gonna throw a 360 on this drum seat because it gets that part of my creativity out. And then the good thing was that all of the I did a lot of sports and stuff in high school. So a lot of that ended up translating because drums are such a physical instrument. that as long as I kept up playing at the same energy level, it kept me in shape. But as far as diet and stuff, I don't know. When I hit 29, that's when I had to start caring. Like before that, I could eat anything. I could sleep on any floor, and you have like an uncomfortable half-hour waking up, and then you're good. But I think 29 is when I had to start paying attention, like, you know, to what I eat and the amount of sleep that I get. And fortunately, I've never drank or smoked in my life. So I think I got
wow, you're my brother. You're my brother. You like the one of the, I'm the same here.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so we're rare. We're rare.
I think that helps you out though, right? Like at least a little bit. Because a lot of my friends, they had to deal with that kind of change in their life a little bit earlier than I did. But yeah, so I think all of that helped. But definitely once I hit 29, that's when I had to start getting at least 5 hours of sleep if I could, and start to chill on the McDonald's meals and stuff like that.
Yeah. So what's your diet like? Are you vegetarian, vegan, or what's your vibe?
No, I mean, everybody around me is, so I usually have a lot of options, and I don't mind it. But I usually have, at this point, it's like avocado toast every morning, coffee, lunch and dinner kind of vary, but I don't know. I got to stay away from junk food. I got to stay away from sweets because I'll start to feel it, man.
That's my weakness. I love sweets. I know we got to, I don't want to keep you, but we want to, what was I going to say? I was going to say something. Vegan. Man, it slipped my mind. But do you have any tip? What would you say?
I would say, for the record, on sweets, I still drink mocha coffee. That's my that's my sweet replacement for all the other stuff I used to eat.
Okay. Now I want to say that by us both having a similar background with not smoking and drinking, I don't look down on anybody. We all have our vices, so it's not like you know we are pure people because we don't do that. But everybody got their stuff that they do. But just saying, it's all about having a balance. You know,
absolutely.
You don't want to be on stage tore down because that might make you play a certain way, but you might do something crazy that may cost you your gig. Before I let you go, do you have any tips you want to give people for the drummers for surviving before we let you go?
I always just think it's important to realize the opportunities you have wherever you're at. And for me, being on tour, like we had talked about with not having to practice, that doesn't mean that there's still not opportunities you don't normally have. So like, for me to stay like mentally positive and not trip out on not having the practice time, I sightsee everything I can. I make art projects. So like I'll hang art like in green rooms, or I'll do videos like with GoPro where I'm playing at different locations, and just trying to keep myself feeling the same routine I have at home helps me to deal with having to be in a new scenario every day, because you got something to focus on. Whereas I think if you're just kind of sitting there and you've got all these flights and all these different times you got to be exactly where you're at and everything else, it gets stressful. And I think, like you were talking about in the beginning, if you are a homebody and all of a sudden you have this drastic change where you're not staying occupied and focused, but you're just kind of floating along, I think it can kind of wear away on your head. So yeah, for me, I just always try and keep myself busy and focused on something. And then that helps the rougher times get by a little easier.
Yo, Aric, do we have any questions? Okay, so before we let you go, we want people to find where they can check out all your amazing arts and talent. So let's put the socials on the. You can find all of Aric's incredible works. And I actually have a question before you go, but if you can make it really short and sweet, what made you decide to add the gymnastics, you know, with the drumming? Because that's my personal question.
Oh no, it's all good. I just loved skating, and I did gymnastics as a kid, and I love basketball. Like Kobe Bryant was like my hero as a kid growing up in LA. So for me, getting to see Kobe do a 360 dunk always gave me this gut reaction. And it's like, I just wanted to find a way to give that kind of a experience for people at a show, you know, not just watching a basketball game or a skateboard video. So I think it probably started with the drum off, because you got to find ways to get a reaction out of people.
Yes, thanks.
And then from there, it just kind of escalated. And with Fever, those guys, they climb trusses, they backflip into the crowd. So it's like that friendly competition where everybody around you is doing it. You kind of step it up even more. So that was kind of the evolution of it.
That's dope. Have you had any injuries or any mistakes?
Just one. I was coming home from 3 months of tour, and I was so excited. I was in Vegas, 4 hours from LA, and I remember the first song that night. I was so pumped to be home. I just jumped and wasn't paying attention, came down on my ankle crooked, and I remember I was supposed to be home, but instead I was in the ER at like,
oh my God,
5 a.m, just waiting. But other than that, luckily nothing's gone wrong. I'm hoping it stays that way as touring comes back, but we'll see.
Yo, Aric, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you
for coming on the show. Wishing you many blessings. I'm glad your health is back. Do what you got to do, to maintain, and hopefully we cross paths again. And I would love to figure out how we can do something collaboratory in the future. And congratulations to all the things you're doing with the new record. And I got to get some of your drum heads. Like, I love everything what you're doing. Much respect. Have a good day. Man. God bless. Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks. Yo, woo, that was really cool. I learned so much more stuff about Aric, and thanks for having him on the show. Also want to mention that today we got some swag giveaways. Can we get that on the screen, Jules? Yeah. So if you have any questions that you ask, you'll have opportunity to win these cool swaggy treats. I actually got most of this stuff, but it's some cool looking bits. I like fashion, so ask your questions, get them ready. We got a couple more guests. I'm looking forward to speaking with our next guest, and the interviews might be a little bit shorter, but I'm thankful that everybody took our time to come on. Without any further ado, 𝗚𝗘𝗧 𝗜𝗧𝗏.
Hey, man.
Yo, what up?
How are you, Daru? Good to see you, man.
Good to see you too, brother. What's going on?
Just hanging out at home, and it's nice and quiet. Everyone's out doing their thing. Kids are at school, so it's a nice chill time for me. So everything's good. Just getting through the crazy downtime as best I can, like all of us.
Yes, sir. Are you in Nashville?
Yeah.
Cool, killing, man. When I found out you was in Nashville, I was like, oh my God, I felt better about my life. So got another one of my brothers down here because I got to tell you, when I first moved to Nashville, I thought I was going to be one thing, but I had to figure it out. But I was very excited to hear that you were down there, and I want to thank you so much for taking our time during your busy schedule. I don't want to keep you too long, but for people that don't know your background, can you give us like a short, little about how you started and all that jazz?
Yeah, I won't bore you with all the early details, but I'm one of those people that just knew I wanted to be a player from a really early age. Like I just always knew from the time earliest as I can remember, I always wanted to play and was just drawn to the drums from day one. So I had support from the family and my parents, which was awesome, and had great teachers growing up. I got into the band programs at school, and the drum lines and the rudimental stuff was a big part of that. And I was always playing in bands, garage bands with people, not just in a practice room by myself. I was always playing since an early age, and so that was invaluable. But I liked all kinds of music. I'm originally from Mississippi, so a lot of that kind of stuff was like the New Orleans music and Memphis, and like the blues, R&B, all that was around me. So I was influenced by that, and there's a lot of great players. I learned how to play in a rhythm section at an early age. At least I was starting to think about what that meant and what was important. All that good stuff. Mm-hmm. And then I went to school at North Texas, studied jazz, and then moved to New York City. Mm-hmm. And I was in New York for like 22 years, I think. And then we moved to Nashville about 5 years ago, full time.
Wow, we came at the same time.
And luckily things started to happen once I moved to New York on a broader scale, became a part of certain bands, and then one thing led to another. A lot of touring, I know that's the topic today, but that's been my life for the last couple of decades, on the road a lot. So
that's very cool. Well, like I said, I don't want to hold you too long. I know we all got things to do, and but yeah, it's so cool. I love what you do, and I'm a big fan, and it was just so cool. When I finally got to meet you, I remember. I think at the time it might have been do you know Marco Saconia?
Yeah.
So I remember
course.
Marco, because I like I was telling people earlier, I started doing the tilts on my drums when in like the mid 2000s, and it was literally just so I can have an identity, because at the time and still to this day, Questlove was like one of the main hip hop guys, and I was just trying to figure out a way just to have an identity, because I had started using less drums. You know, I downsized to just a snare drum, and floor time, because the music that I was playing, I didn't need to have all those extra drums. So I was like, okay, cool. And one thing in the hip hop community, they always like, yo, don't copy off my style, don't bite off my style. So when I started playing with a lot of the legendary hip hop artists from like 𝗟𝗓𝗥𝗡𝗚 𝗏𝗡, Slum Village, and I just was trying to find an identity. And since I played traditional grip, I was already doing the snare drum that way. And then I woke up, I was like, man, what would happen if I do the floor time? But I knew it wasn't until I think I started working with Jack, because I knew your name, but I just, it's one of those things where you hear people's name, but you don't always know everything that they've done. And then I remember Marco hit me up, was like, yeah, I didn't even know any other drums, but Marco was like, yeah, Keith, you got them 𝗚𝗑 angles, and I'm automatically like, what? Somebody else?
I know, man. The first time I saw you, I think the first time I saw you was with Jack at Coachella. I saw some footage of that. It was incredible, insane, man. I'm a huge fan. I love the way you play. You know that, man.
Thank you.
But I love that you're all about the music, man. You just put yourself all into it, and it's the real deal. I love it.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, man.
Go ahead.
But I remember thinking the same thing. I'm like, man, is my brother here is like taking it to another level. I mean, you're like facing the audience with those heads now, man. I thought I was bad, but yeah, it was the same for me, because I played traditional, and it just made sense on everything, because the snare drum was always tilted away, and it just became normal to me. And then the toms were, the floor toms were slanted away in the same angle, because they're on the same playing level. And my toms, my rack toms are kind of tilted, not away like yours, but they're more flat, So, and I think just because of the way I sit high, and you kind of sit pretty high, right? So you kind of feel this sensation of kind of being on top of everything in a way that you're in control of this machine,
Dominating. Nah, that's cool. And I'm glad too, because one of the things I speak about, and I don't want to get too long-winded, is when I'm sure because you're a master at what you do. And it's like, we just came from the era where you want to have an identity. I remember growing up, finding out about the Modern Drum magazines, to see the profile of some of my idols, and the drum set was their identity. It was like, that was them, So mm-hmm. I know when I saw you, and I know that there's a lot of, I don't know back then, but I know nowadays there's a lot of little beefs, or like people, they want to stand out or be but like, and especially in the hip hop community, it's all about having an identity. But I'm glad that, when I saw you, although I found out there's another person that played with angles, it's like your approach and your finesse is just different. Like your approach, man, it's just like you become the drum, and it was automatic, no beefs, because it's like you had your own approach. Now I can see, if we both were playing the same things, there might have been a little inside beefs.
Oh man, well, thank you, man. That means a lot. I appreciate that, man.
Yeah, man. So just to fast forward, just want to talk about the topic we're talking about, surviving. How to survive on tour. Do you have any experiences? I know that you play with some of the best from Steely Dan. You know what I'm saying? Like, how was it? He's already had like freaking Steve Gadd and people that we look up to. Was that a lot of pressure being in that position? You feel like you had to be like Steve Gadd, or like, how did you survive that?
Yeah, man. I mean, it's really kind of a feather in the cap kind of gig, because as a musician, because they're known for all the great session musicians that they got together, did all these great rhythm sections over the years for all these great recordings. So, being a part of that lineage has always been, really an honor for me. And I think I've had so much experience coming in after all these legends and amazing players that I just had to kind of realize that, okay, maybe I have something here that's why I'm getting hired, I don't want this to be a head trip. I gotta be confident and do what I do and realize that it's got to be valid as well in some way, because I'm just giving my approach to it. Right.
Yes.
So that's kind of how I've always tried to approach it, and respect who was there before me. And, you know, a lot of the times that book may have been written for that music, whatever it might be. And I pay homage to that, honor that, but I also find a way for me to put my thing in it.
Yes.
And make it mine. So, and over the years with Steely Dan, I've been able to do that because I've been there long enough to where I played these tunes a lot, and it's really become a band. Like, it's been the same guys for many years now. And so it's turned into a cool machine where we play well together, and it's turned into other things from the original recordings more than maybe back in the beginning, where I felt like I had to be more careful, you know?
Yes.
So yeah, man, it's been amazing. And I've learned a lot just listening to those records and kind of copying what those guys did. 'Cause you got Bernard Purdy and, I mean, everybody's played with them, you know, like, Steve Gadd and Murata and you know, Porcaro, Ed Green. I mean, it goes on and on and on. I'm missing a lot of them right now, but when I'm on the spot, I always forget. But I mean, there's the greatest studio guys from back in the day, you know, LA and New York guys. And so I always say it's kind of like the greatest drum school, that gig. Man. You know what I mean?
So yeah, that's just with that said, I'm thinking you guys were out on tour, and maybe we can fast forward, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, you were out with another tour situation before the pandemic. What was that? What group was that?
Yeah, that was a group called KCL. It's Wayne Krantz, myself, and Tim LaFave. And so this is it's a kind of a improvisational guitar trio that I've been a part of for, you know, maybe at least 20 years now. Wow. When I moved to New York, it was one of the first situations I was lucky to get involved with Krantz. And that turned into a regular gig we were doing at the 55 bar every Thursday night. And so it created this buzz, and we became a band. We started, you know, touring, doing festivals in Europe and going to Japan and stuff like that. Over the years, it kind of built into this whole momentum. And so, you know, we got busy and we weren't able to play together so much in the past several years, but we came together for like a reunion tour, and we were even in Japan and China, and we went to Europe and then some stuff in the States. And this was January, February of 2020. And then we got home March 1st, and then everything just shut down. Like we snuck that tour in there, you know. But those are the last live gigs I've done. It's been a year now. It's incredible.
Wow, that's amazing. So yeah, just to pinpoint the subject, you know, with those amazing artists, including your amazing self, like when you was on that tour, were you guys doing like night after night, or like what type of was that? Like what type of tour was that?
Well, I would say, you know, getting back to the subject, like, you know, I've been on all the different types of budgets you could be on in a touring situation. You know, I'm sure all of us here have. Yes. So, I mean, sometimes you're really well taken care of and it's easier to deal with. Sometimes you're playing every night and there maybe aren't as many nights. I mean, there aren't as many days off, and the travel can be a little more brutal. Yes. You have those early 3 a.m. calls in the lobby, and you got to fly all day and then do a show that night. You know, that kind of stuff is brutal. Like, I try to avoid those as much as possible, unless I really love the music. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But you know, yeah, it was pretty tame. I mean, we wanted to, because we're older now and we're not in our 20s and 30s. Back when I used to think I was invincible and would, you know, feel like I could do anything. But so we tried to plan it in a way that we had some days off and made it work. But yeah, it was a lot. I mean, we were flying quite a bit. But like I said, we did some Asia stuff and Europe before coming to the States to end it. Wow! But it was great. It was fun to get together again.
Wow, that's amazing. I have another question, but I think we have a question from the audience.
Okay.
Questions, Jules? Can you see the question, Keith?
Oh, tell us about touring with Sting. Wow, man. Well, it was incredible. I got to say, one of the first incredible thing that happened was I got to hang with Vinny and meet him. We went to. I'm a huge fan, of course. We who is it? But when I was touring with Steely Dan, I got the call. I guess Vinny couldn't do this tour that was coming up, or I had other obligations, whatever it might be. I can't remember. But I got to go to Sting's house outside of London just to kind of meet everybody and get a feel for everything and watch the guys rehearse, because Vinny was doing some of the promo stuff coming up. But we had the best time. I just got to hang with him and for about a week, I think it was. It was an amazing time. It was a learning experience getting to see him play that close up and intimate. And we had a really good time. I'll never forget that. But I don't know if Vinny is hearing this, but man, that was a really something I treasure. That was a while ago. Anyway, it was amazing. I mean, obviously playing the Police tunes, the trio stuff was a gas, and then a lot of the other newer stuff we were playing along with tracks, and there was a big production, so it kind of ran the whole gamut of things that Sting has done over the years, and that was amazing to experience. But I got to say, musically it was amazing, and just the overall touring situation was incredible. Top notch, treatment, which makes a difference when you're on the road for that long, because it was about a 2-year run with a few breaks, but it was pretty full on. And so that's what I'm saying. When I've been in the van, with like a jazz tour, and then you go to something like that where it's private jets and the best hotels, and that was another experience, another bubble, but it was amazing, man. I learned a lot and loved it, and it was great to come in and do that. I experienced that.
That's awesome. And just to add to that, the same thing, like when I was talking to Aric, we mentioned we have the different chapters in our career, but I tell people you got to still pay dues. You know what I'm saying? So
totally.
Just to close out on this last question, I know when you were cutting your teeth, growing, getting more opportunities, I know, was there anything you had to figure out, like how you had to survive, like whether it been like changing your diet, and the gear that you was using, any type of, things you could share with us regarding that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously drums are a physical instrument. And, when I was younger in my 20s and 30s, I kind of felt invincible, and I could just kind of do anything and still feel good for the show, because that's the main thing. I want to be able to give my all for the show,
Yes.
So, and even now more than ever, now that I'm getting older, I have to really focus on that even more, because I feel the effects of aging more than I used to, and I have to be careful with the diet, and I have to be careful with doing too much. Because back in those days, on off days I would try to do clinics or sessions, or try to teach privately and just say yes to everything, because when you're younger you kind of have that energy. But now I try to balance it out with just sightseeing in the city and experience the culture that I'm in, or food, or stuff like that. But I got to say, I've had really, my weight can kind of fluctuate. I just have that type of metabolism, so I got to be really careful. So I've during this downtime, I've been a little, I can't say I've been, it's like I'm not on the program like I should be, but when I'm on the road, it's easier because I make time for the gym, at least on days off, if not every day, just to get a little cardio in, walk around the town, try to eat well. I got to watch the carbs. I got to try to watch the sugars, and get all the junk out.
Yes.
Stay hydrated, drink a lot of water, and I'm aware of all that, so it's important.
Right. You're right.
And getting enough rest. All this stuff we all know, but when you're on the road, it's you got to find. I might have to take naps. I got to find those places before the gig. I might have a little power nap. Just so I feel ready to go. So You do what you got to do.
Those are some great tips. Yeah, you're right. Taking naps, you know what I'm saying? That little 15-minute nap can go a long way.
Oh my God, they make a huge difference.
But Keith, yo, thank you so much for your knowledge and your time. I really appreciate you. I'm looking forward to us getting together. I want to say, I remember we had the opportunity to do the Sweetwater. What would they call that show? The Sweetwater Festival? Gear Fest.
Gear Fest, that's right.
Gear Fest, yeah. So that was really dope. A couple years ago, it was me, Mr. 𝗘𝗧 and we had the one and only Dennis Chambers, and it was just so cool, the brotherhood, and it was just dope seeing Dennis jump on my kit that's behind me. But Keith actually killed it because he already know how to play with the angles. So he made me. Keith made me want to start going back to shedding. I gotta go get my finessing back up. But yeah, I'm looking forward to us getting together, and definitely when I'm back in Nashville, hopefully when things get a little bit. I mean, Nashville's got doing whatever they want to do. To be honest, I drove through downtown and I'm like, no mask, word.
No, man. So some people think it's over around here. I'm being careful,
man.
I already got both vaccines, both doses, and I'm good. But still, you gotta think about other people. I still wear the mask when I go out, man. Because you don't know. We don't know this thing. It's a new situation.
Right.
You know?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Everybody.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, it's not over yet. Let's be careful and let's get through this thing together.
Facts.
Facts.
Yeah. But Keith, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm wishing you and your beautiful family a blessed day and looking forward to getting with you.
Let's do it.
And yeah, speak soon. God bless. Thank you.
You too, man. Thanks for having me.
Yep. You're welcome. Peace. Woo. That was Mr. 𝗘𝗧. A lot of great insight. Do your Googles if you don't know all of his work. James Taylor, a lot of legendary people that he's played with and stuff that we like today. And last but not least, we got one of my biggest influences. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I know that my drumming is a lot different nowadays because I'm more of a hip hop and rock and roll drummer. But in a certain era of my career, I was a big fusion guy when I started learning about the jazz community after coming up playing gospel music. And when I heard about this next gentleman, my big brother, I was blown away, because I remember my first experience checking out Vinny was the 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 Warrior series. It was volume 2, and I had it on VHS tape. Y'all young kids, y'all may not know about that VCR, but I had it on VCR tape. And one of my older mentors gave it to me. It was part 2, 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 Warrior series. It featured Dave Weckl, Steve Gadd, and Vinny Colaiuta. And right off the bat, I knew that there was something different about Vinny's approach, because at the time, I didn't really see a lot of guys having the black oil heads. One other person I saw with those heads were the Terry Bozzio, and I actually had that instructional videotape. But just Vinny's approach, I was like, this dude is special. And then eventually I started getting everything that he played on. And I'm looking forward to hearing, his knowledge. And we're not going to hold him for a long time. But without any further ado, Vinny Colaiuta.
Hey, Daru, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Brother, such an honor to have you in this place.
The same here. And to be in the company of all of you guys, Aric and Keith, my friend Keith, and man, and you, of course, so amazing. Thank you.
It's an honor. I'm glad that we were able to, build our brotherhood, you know what I'm saying? And it's such an honor to grow up being a fan and a Vinny disciple to now having a brotherhood. I'm just so grateful. But I've learned a lot, just by watching you. And like I was telling people earlier, back in the days, we didn't have YouTube. We had to transcribe and listen with our ear, you know what I'm saying? And I remember I was able to eventually listen to the recordings and be like, okay, that's Vinny, because you had your own identity, your own touch. And even when I got exposed to the 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 Memorial series, I was just like, I knew it was something special about you. And I wanted to get every project that you was on. So, I just want to thank you for what you've done for the community. You know what I'm saying? And you're one of the best to ever do it. And just to talk on the topic, the topic is how to survive touring. But before we get into the topic, if you can, I just want you to give a short little history, if you can, on some of your beginnings. If you can.
Yeah, I mean, some of my beginnings was like, well, ever since I was a kid, I was like always beating on stuff and And I think that just the drums found me, you know, and I've said it many times in interviews and things like that. And you know, it was one of those things where drums were just a part of my life. And then when I was in 7th grade, after I took my first drum lesson, I took it seriously and I said, this is it. There's no turning back for me. This is what I'm going to do. And I think having that kind of focus, you know, that kind of sort of intent that was unstoppable, really, as idealistic as it may have been, you know, was good. I mean, I didn't have a plan B or anything. So it was just, I was going to go for broke. And I think when you're young, you can afford, you know, by the time you graduate high school and then go to college for a while and you say, okay, I'm going to try this on for size in the professional world. You got a little bit of time to play with, you know what I'm saying? Like sometimes a lot of kids come out of college and they'll say, okay, I'm going to travel for a couple of years. And, you know, at that age, that's probably the time to do it. And if you're going to really take chances, as soon as you get out of school, you have a little bit of time to play with. That's probably the best time. And, you know, that's what I did. You know, I sort of said, well, okay, I'm going to come to LA. I mean, it was New York or LA, and I was very, very, very close to moving to New York. And it just kind of fell through. Yeah. Yeah. Cause I used to hang out and spend a lot of time in New York, and I'm from the East Coast, and I was in Boston, and it was a hop, skip, and a jump. And, but at the last second I went to LA. So, and you know, and it worked out for me, but I was, you know, I was definitely struggled for a minute, you know, for a few months. And it was, you know, and I've, you know, like many of us, I've paid my dues, you know. I've spent years paying my dues. Yes. You know what I mean? In many ways that is it's another show entirely, you know?
Yes, sir.
So it's like, you know, I think that after, you know, doing so many gigs where you're, you know, hauling your drums around in a Volkswagen, and you come out of the gig, like for example, in New Hampshire, you know, at 2:30 in the morning, and you got to shovel 4 feet of snow away from your car to put your drums back in your Volkswagen, to drive an hour and a half to go back home. And you're kind of doing that a lot, you know, that might qualify for some dues. That's just one little thing.
Yes, sir.
But, and, you know, we've all done so that by the time touring came around, the idea of being on a bus was like, you know, it was luxurious.
Yes.
You know, luxurious to me. And so that's how it kind of started for me, was touring on a tour bus. And when actually, a little known fact, I think, is that after I left Berkeley, I was still in Boston. I did this gig with a guy called Al Kooper, who was part of, actually a founding member of Blood, Sweat, and Tears.
Wow.
You know, and he had this thing called the Blues Project many years ago, and Super Sessions. And, you know, he was involved in a lot of this kind of stuff. And he was a record producer, and then he had his own solo career. So, you know, myself and a bunch of musicians from Boston, there were some really, really great musicians that were involved in this.
Wow.
Like jazz musicians. Like there was a guy called Stanton Davis, who was a trumpeter in Boston, had a great band that was well known in Boston, in the Boston area at that time, called Ghetto Mysticism. And so it was him and a trombonist called 𝗟𝗓𝗡𝗏 and myself and Tim Landers on bass. And like there was, you know, musicians, really good musicians. And, you know, we ended up doing this tour, and it was about 6 weeks, and we toured the United States. And interestingly enough, at that time, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers were just coming out, and Stan Lynch was playing drums in the band. So we were playing at this place called the Exit Inn in Nashville.
Oh yeah, that's still around. That's still around.
Still there, right?
Yes.
They opened for us.
Oh my God.
That's how new they were. And I remember they were playing this song called American Girl, which then turned around to be a huge hit. And the rest is history. You know, the iconic Tom Petty, may he rest in peace. So on that tour, that was like my first tour before I left Boston, really. And then I moved to LA, and after a few months, I got hooked up with Frank Zappa. So
oh yeah, we're gonna get into that. But before we get into that, I think we got a couple questions, Jules. Can you see the questions, Vinny?
Yeah. Yes, I can. From Glenn Fryer, how do you keep your mental and physical health up when going from place to place? Being away from family and loved ones is the hardest thing for any touring person. And I mean, you know, you have people out there like bus drivers who are just constantly, you know, there are people like musicians for a long time. It was we were able to sort of strike a balance between being session players and road guys. I did that for a zillion years. I was like going back and forth off the road. And when I first started getting into these long tours, I thought, you know, maybe my session career will be over, right? Nope, didn't. I came right back into it. And then I became international man. I became international man after that. So I was flying back and forth to London, and this is when budgets were big. This was in the 90s. And, you know, that was like not a problem for people to do that because people were paying for music directly. In other words, you know, somebody produces music, you pay for it. Therefore, it can be reinvested into a budget, and then it continues and continues. Yes, there were crooks, but that's another story. So the whole thing is that being on the road like that, I've seen, you know, and witnessed, I mean, you know, a lot of relationships dissolve just from being gone all the time. And it's a hard one. So, I mean, you know, you have to be in a relationship in the first place that is going to be able to withstand that. And that's a really rare one. And because we naturally want to be together, of course. So you really have to communicate as much as possible and say, look, if possible, up front, this is what you're getting into, you know, unless you're already in a relationship and then suddenly you have this opportunity to go on the road and someone says, hey, I'm going to offer you this gig, but you're going to be gone for 8 months. You're going to have a serious talk about that and see where you're going to go with it, because, you know, there's sacrifices either way.
Yes.
So, but when you're out there, you know, just communicate as much as possible and take care of yourself. And as Keith very rightfully said, when you're in your 20s and 30s, you know, you always think you're invincible. You're immortal. You're unbreakable. You know, you can do no wrong. You know everything. You know, hey, I'm 20 something and I know everything. You know, it's just the way it is. I can do whatever I want and I'll bounce right back. And that may be so, but it will catch up with you. So, you know, you it's a battle against this sort of, you know, the youthful vitality and trying to have some common sense. But really, at the end of the day, probably the best two things you could do is, I mean, besides exercise, obviously, and the right kind of exercise, is eat right and sleep.
Yes.
Like don't scrimp on the sleep. I mean, we all have different metabolisms. We all have different ways of doing it. But I think that the people who don't really need to sleep that much are probably more of an anomaly. And I would say that most of us need a specific amount of sleep to function well. And, you know, the same thing that Keith said, when you get older, hey, I like to take naps and I save as much as I can for the gig. So rest well. It's all common sense stuff. It's not, there's no mystery here, you know, rest well, eat well, and try to stay limber, you know, and because what we do is really physical. And even though we can relax when we play to sort of, you know, conserve ourselves and pace ourselves, you know, depending on the kind of music we play, sometimes it's just like full on soccer game, you know, for many people. So then you have to sort of make sure you stay limber and be kind to yourself. And because, you know, it's one thing to do something that's that high impact, but again, it's like being a football player. After a certain number of years, your body just isn't going to take it anymore. You can only do that. You can only beat yourself up for so long. So if you're going to be that guy who is, you know, is the football player, you have to be cognizant of that and try to offset it with, you know, massages and hydration and you know, yogic stretches and things of that sort, and balance it. It's really that's kind of it, really, I think. You know?
That's some very good information and good tips.
Yeah.
You're right, Vinny. You're spot on. And I, you know, I've learned that, you know, I had this coming from that hip hop diet, you know, where the per diems were not as much, you know, to the rock and roll. I had to start figuring things out because, like I said earlier, like we were doing our shows in the hip hop world, we were going on at like 2 a.m.
Right,
finishing and then had to go, you know, travel the next day. But I had to figure it out But yeah, that was a lot of insightful tips. Think we have one more question? Did he be?
Well, yeah, the question is, I don't tour, but how do you feel when you leave your home country? Does it ever worry you? Well, I would answer that differently now than I would have 10 years ago or 20 years ago. So, you know, I mean, for a long time, you know, my mom was kind of ill. And so when I left home, I would always worry how she was going to do. And, you know, but back then, it really didn't worry me so much leaving my home country, because I think that there was, you know, globally, there was much more of a sense of, I don't know, solidarity and just understanding, and just things were sort of all working in that way. You know, people were just going back and forth all the time, business trips and tours and this, that, and the other thing. And you know, I used to sort of go, oh, okay. I mean, the things that I would think about back then were things like, okay, I better go get that other phone with the other SIM card, and, you know, because otherwise the phone bills are going to be astronomical, things like that. Or, you know, oh, hey, I got to change. I mean, I've been doing this so long that I would start thinking about changing currency. I mean, this is before the euro. That's how long I was doing it. I remember when the Berlin Wall was still up, you know. I mean, seriously, I saw it and it touched it, you know, and it's, you know, but things are different now. But now, you know, it's such a hotbed. And I think, you know, partially since the advent of this pandemic that we're in, but I think even preceding it's, you know, there's just some tension. There's been a lot of socio-political tension that now it's kind of like, you know, yeah, I would be a little worried, because I know a lot of people who left the US and they can't come back yet. They're stuck. They're just stuck. So if I had to leave now, I'd be a little worried about whether or not I could come back into the US, you know, just because of the situation is so, and we're just not used to it. And the politics and the laws, they're changing rapidly. So, you know, I think differently about that right now.
Wow, that's a great point. That's a great point.
Yeah.
I remember that time too of you know, before, I guess last year, even before 9/11, things were just differently when you would travel. It was a lot more looser. You know what I'm saying?
It was.
But, you know,
you just go anywhere at a moment's notice, you know.
Yes.
I think I'm going to go to London right now, and it was not a problem. I've done stuff like that.
Man.
Yeah, just get on a plane, because I felt like it, and it was easy, and yeah, it's a different beast now, isn't it?
Yes.
But yeah. So the whole touring thing is, and now touring, we really don't know how that's going to unfold yet in terms of touring coming back. It's all a bit of conjecture, because I know that there were some things planned in the summertime. People were looking to do outdoor things, but, you know, we're constantly getting these different messages like, there's a new surge now. And so, well, no, okay, it's safe. Okay, now it's not safe. And so I think that a lot of promoters are just saying, no, we're going to pull the plug. We can't do this yet. And so a lot of things were postponed until next year. I mean, even for me, my last, I was listening to Keith talk about what his last shows were, right? That they just barely got back into the United States.
Wow.
Right when this started. And I remember my last gig was March the 5th, 2020 at Disney Hall in LA here with Herbie Hancock.
Woo, Herb.
With Herb, yep. And the LA Philharmonic with Dudamel conducting. So that was quite a gig. And it was, if you know, if I had to go, well, what was my last gig? That's a good one, you know, a good one to go out on. But I remember even then that the audience there were a few people wearing masks then. And it was just starting to get to the point where, you know, things weren't shut down, but there was some caution being exercised. And then I mean, almost immediately after that, it was game over. And that was it. That was over a year ago. I mean, we're now at, you know, we're almost at the end of March. It's been over a year. So,
Mm-hmm.
so we don't know where it's going to go yet. And a lot of people are getting used to staying home. They're saying, geez, I kind of like this, you know. You know what I mean?
The whole model is changing.
Yeah, it is.
Virtual concerts, and you know
virtual
what?
Everything, exactly. And I saw that coming back in 2017. That's why I tried to start a network, you know, to do that, so the musicians could do it freely and be able to make a living doing it. But it was so new that, you know, when I brought it up to people, they looked at me like I was the man in the moon, you know. Now look at everything, you know.
Man,
crazy.
But you know what? Now that I think about it, although that's been, I mean, I feel like we put enough hours to tour in life, but I think that it might be a good luck for us to be able to preserve what we do, and it might be another way of surviving.
Yeah, I think that these kinds of things could coexist, really, because I think a lot of us, like, you know, we kind of miss the idea. Like, I don't miss the getting beat up on the road where, you know, you're doing these crazy travel things because promoters book the way they route tours is so ridiculous that they have no concept of what it can do to the human being and the human body. They're not thinking straight, you know. And I also understand the difficulty it is to book tours, you know, and to put one together. I get that. But again, like Keith was saying, there's ways to do it where you don't have to beat yourself up. And, you know, so, you know, and, you know, yeah, I mean, as much as I don't miss that constant getting thrown around, but the idea of, yeah, boy, it would be nice to go to Europe and do a little, because it's beautiful there and I like it. And I have friends there, and you know what I mean? It's just to, you know, there's a thing I think in all of us that likes to sort of be able to travel and go to see other places. And it's a good thing to do. One thing that I've learned from doing it over the years is that I've learned about other cultures and what they actually think, how they actually live. And I got a different story than what I was just fed from mainstream media. You know, if I'm just staring at one thing, you know, one television station all the time, and I get one narrative, and then all of a sudden I go to like 8 countries in Europe, and I come back home, I'm thinking, wait a minute, that's not what they said on TV. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So it's a valuable thing to be able to do that.
Totally.
And yeah, and just sort of interact with other cultures and audiences as well.
Wow. While we're on that subject too, I want to give my condolences for Mr. 𝗟𝗓𝗓𝗏. We actually lost him.
Amen.
Man, I know hopefully he's down watching, looking at us. And I know you had the opportunity of working with 𝗟𝗓𝗓𝗏. I remember seeing the Blue Note thing you guys did, which was mind blowing. But yeah, it's just amazing. For people that don't know, I'm sure everybody should know Vinny, but do your Googles. He's played with some of the best of every, you know, from Herbie Hancock, Sting, and, you know, check his work out if you don't know about him. But it's just a blessing that we've been able to just survive 2020. You know what I'm saying?
Amen. I agree.
It's just such a blessing. And I know we got to cut off because I know, you know, I don't want to keep you too long, but hopefully, God willing, I'll be a guest on your podcast. You want to tell people a little bit about your podcast, your show?
Yeah, I started it last year, and I have about, I don't know, 15 episodes up now. But I have a podcast called Breakfast with Vinny. It's www.breakfastwithvinny.com. It is a funny sounding title. And there's a little bit of a story behind it. And it's on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify too. It's on Spotify for the moment anyway. Yeah, Apple and there's an app called Podbean that you can find it, or its own website. And if you do go onto Podbean or the website Breakfast with Vinny, please feel free to sign up. I will never spam you, but it's always good to know, to be able to know how many people actually follow, so that if there is any other big news, you can be informed about it, and who knows what other kinds of things might be coming down the pike. But yeah, I talk a lot in broad strokes on the show, and so I think, you know, hopefully there's something for everyone there. Yeah,
great, and it's really cool. I'm glad we had you on the show, Vinny. Thanks so much for your time. It's just so cool. It's like we just figuring out ways. And I know the topic was just survive touring. We just got to figure out how to survive just being alive. You know what I'm saying? Like, and
we
also,
definitely do.
Also to survive just being able to pay our bills. That's what we do as musicians, because the model has changed. The model has changed, and it's not what was back then. Like Benny talked about the budgets that they had. That's not happening right now. So, you know, the game is oversaturated. So you have the YouTube drummers, people that's, you know, found little cheat codes, but it's not easy for us all, you know, just to maintain. So we're trying to find avenues and ways to survive, you know. So when you can support like Benny the podcast, and just we gotta stick together. You know what I'm saying?
Amen. We all do have to stick together. And I think, yeah, the model has changed, and we're all sort of clamoring to try to figure it all out now. And yeah, we have to stand in solidarity and figure out how to navigate through this, because really, I mean, that's a whole other thing. I mean, this could be a completely different show of itself, you know, and I've spoken out about this a lot. And I talked about it on my podcast, and I talked about it on an interview that I did with the Sessions panel. I spoke about it, you know, and that was a couple of years ago, but I will tell you, there's an organization that explains a lot about what is actually going on. And it's called Music Answers. And they are on www.musicanswers.org, not .com, .org. And, you know, I would, you know, recommend anyone to sort of check that out, because they're very informative, and they explain exactly how a lot of this extortion happens. And so we kind of, you know, we've become this society that there's a whole psychological component that we all want to be. Everybody wants to be seen. So it's the attention economy. And so what happens is the networks are taking advantage of that, and they're selling our data, and we're giving everything away for free. But it's, but hey, look at me, you know, I've got an equal playing field now. And then what? You can't pay your mortgage with it. Right. You can't. You know, you gotta live in reality here. So what are you gonna do? Hope that after you get a certain amount of sponsors that you'll get a sponsorship with a clothing company or some hotel, or I don't know, you know, are you gonna sell merchandise and you know, just maybe get some AdSense on YouTube? I mean, it's a touchy thing, because even as democratized as it is, there's still a hierarchy, and there's equal opportunity, but there is absolutely no guarantee of an equal outcome. And people expect an equal outcome, but who's guaranteeing that? The only way to get any kind of equal outcome is if everybody was on a universal basic income. That's it, really. Wow. But it's like, you know, we all have different amounts of things to pay, and then you have to think about the entire economy. Like, why do some cars cost more than others? And okay, we're all making this universal basic income, but like, does that mean some people are going to be really rich and some aren't? It's everything is just chaotic right now, you know? Yeah. So we have to address all those things. And I think that, you know, like I said, those things that I mentioned are definitely worth looking into. And that's about all I can say about it right now, without going on another half an hour time.
Oh my God. No, I don't want to keep you that long, Benny, but thank you. So that's some really good information. You're right. I want to thank you. I did wanted to ask you about Frank, but we can do that on another time. Hopefully you have me.
Oh, well, I'll tell you right now about Frank quickly, because we have to go. People say, well, what was it like? You know, it was like a tornado. It was like boot camp meets the Comedy Store or Comedy Central meets Juilliard. That's what it was like.
Oh my God.
That's exactly what it was like.
Woo. Well, God willing, when I come on as a guest for your show, we'll be able to talk about that. But
absolutely,
really, I want to thank you so much, you know, for coming on the show, making time. And
thank you, Daru.
Looking forward to us getting together again. I'll never forget when we started exchanging and talking back and forth through text. And you was like, next time you come to LA, let's get food, and you kept your word. Pick me up, you scoop me up.
We went to that Thai place or something,
Thai place? Yeah. It was
great.
It was so cool, and just, you know, we got a chance to break bread, and I'm so thankful that God, you know, put you on this earth. You know what I'm saying? To inspire, and you're still inspiring all of us. You're still inspiring all of us.
Thank you.
Keep doing what you do. God bless you and your family. Looking forward
God
to seeing
bless
you
you.
again. And hope
Amen,
you have a
brother.
good day. Thanks, Vinny.
Thank you, brother.
All right, thanks.
Ciao, ciao.
All right, ciao. Wow. My head is cracked. I don't even think I'm going to close out with a drum. I don't even know. I can't even close out with a drum thing on this one, but I want to thank all my guests. We didn't get a chance to put Keith's information, his socials. Jules, you want to pop that on the screen? You don't have it. So anyway, 𝗚𝗘𝗧 maybe there's a website out there. He's on Instagram. I was about to say MySpace. He's probably on MySpace too. But check out 𝗚𝗘𝗧 on all the socials. I want to thank all my guests. Thank you guys for tuning in. Special thanks to Aric and 𝗚𝗘𝗡𝗚. Hope I got the name right. I'm bad with names sometimes, but glad we had him on the show today. Also, shout out to my big brother, 𝗏𝗏𝗘𝗏. Hope you guys are safe out there. Still wear your mask. You know what I'm saying? Because we got to be considerate. Everybody don't have the vaccine yet, or everybody's not trying to get the vaccine. So still do the right thing, and hopefully we get back to normal. Thank you guys for tuning in today. God bless Daru Jones.